Hey, Stephanie, if you could just mute yourself. Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Erin Hollis, Associate Director of Alumni Outreach here at the MIT Alumni Association. Thank you so much for joining us today for our monthly Career Lunch and Learn series. Backed by popular demand, we are revisiting the topic of resumes. We are delighted to once again have our friends from the Career Muse here with us today, who will be providing a deeper dive into the resume crafting and customization process. For those of you who weren't able to watch the first resume webcast, it is available on our YouTube page, as will the presentation today. As a reminder, our webinar is being broadcast live, and I encourage you, our viewers, to submit questions using the Q&A feature in your toolbox, or excuse me, on your toolbar. For all of our listeners joining via YouTube, you may add your questions to the comments field. You can also tweet your comments and questions using MIT Better Worlds. Okay, it is my great pleasure to turn things over today to our presenters from Career Muse, MIT alumnus Dapo Bakare and Stephanie Smith from Career Muse. Dapo, live from Nigeria, and Stephanie, live from Seattle. I will turn things over to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dapo, co-founder of Career Muse. I'm here with my co-founder, Stephanie Smith. Stephanie Smith comes with 9+ years of recruiting experience, where she's managed multi-million-dollar agencies for Fortune 500 companies. In fact, we met while she was managing the Amazon account. She's a former strategic customer success manager, and she screened thousands of applications and placed hundreds of people in jobs. Take it away, Stephanie.
Is a fellow alum of MIT. He graduated with a dual master's in 2010, MBA and Master of Science in Engineering. Following that, Dapo went on to do engineering at Intel. He also went over to Amazon and spent 4 years, which is a long time by Amazon standards, as a senior product manager, looking at intrapreneurship opportunities and evaluating some great ideas. He actually launched Amazon Home Services. So we're pleased to have Dapo. He's my trusted advisor, business partner, and CEO of Career Muse. Thanks, Dapo.
Hey there. Thank you, MIT, for having us back. It was a pleasure. It's an honor for us to be here. Today, we'll be taking the feedback we've gotten from all of you and going into a deeper dive of the resume process. Think of this as kind of course 2 of resume engineering. We'll be starting off in this process by going through, a really deep dive on everything that's going on. And as we go through this process, if you have any questions and you're not able to get through the chat, both on the system and on YouTube, you can always email us afterwards at ben@askcareermuse.com. We've already gotten a couple of comments and we'll be answering those over the course of the next few days. But feel free to reach out to us at ben@askcareermuse.com. Now, we'll be covering 3 major areas today. The first one is the online filters. The online filters is really the first thing that your resume gets to. And what's all that happening with that? Well, it's cleaning out and categorizing the information that you put out for the companies. As you can see in this cartoon, it's important to make sure it's formatted properly. You don't want Roman numerals on your resume. Go into the next slide. And so one of the major things about online filters is ATS. So I'm just going to kick off a quick poll to see how much people are familiar with this. So you should see a poll that should come out shortly. There we go. How many of you are familiar with what ATS stands for? Yeah, I'll get some good response. So looking at the data that we have right now, majority of you, actually 86%, I'm going to cut it off for now and share with everyone. Majority of you aren't familiar with it. So I'll go into that in brief detail. ATS system.
Why don't you tell them what an ATS is?
Yes. So ATS was redesigned by companies. So 90% of the companies out there have ATS systems. And why do they have ATS systems, also known as applicant tracking systems? It's because they need to handle the barrage of emails, of resumes they get. So they get thousands or hundreds. So at Amazon, you get thousands of emails, whether it's Google. And for companies, they need a way to process and sift through that, categorize them. Those are in the relevant for jobs, those are not relevant for the jobs, and think of it as a way of filtering it out so they can easily search for candidates. Now, the problem is if your resume is not formatted in the right way, doesn't have the right keywords and the right information in there, you may not get found. So one of the key things we want to be covering today is looking at how we can improve your content in your resume to have those keywords and filters so that when you get through those systems, you can easily be discovered for the recruiters or hiring managers.
Cool.
I'll transition to Stephanie to give you a deeper dive into the ATS process.
So I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard or experienced the resume black hole. And that's truly what it is. 75% of the time when you apply, your resume is being screened out by what we call the hiring bots, which is the ATS system. And that's based on keywords. It's also based on the format that you submit your resume in. So if you're using an image file, say you use InDesign to do your resume and you save it as a PDF in an image file, the systems can't read images. That same thing applies to visual resumes. While they may look really fancy, they've got a lot of color, those templates break down when they go through the applicant tracking systems. So what you want to do is actually have an ATS-friendly version of your resume that you're submitting into the system. Anytime you submit to an online job application, like Dapo said, 90% of the time, those companies are using those systems. You want to make sure that you're using a format that's readable by the system. In most cases, the safest bet is docx, doc files, text files. PDFs are read by most company systems nowadays, but being on the safe side, I recommend using docx because if you've ever done a copy and paste of text off of a PDF, you've probably seen that it kind of tears apart the information. The same thing happens when it goes to these systems. As a recruiter, I was wondering what was happening to these resumes when I'd see them. It looked like a garbled mess. The sections were out of place. And what was happening was the ATS systems weren't processing those resumes. Other things that can break the system are columns, visual graphics. If you have your picture on your resume, that's certainly not going to get through the system. And I don't recommend it anyways. Other things include headers and footers. Those are going to break the system. And a lot of the templates that you're going to find in Word or other tools that you find online, even if they claim to be ATS friendly, be very careful. An ATS friendly format is a very simple format. You can add some color, you can add some lines, but you want to keep it very simple so that those sections are read by the system and your resume looks the same when you submit it versus when you put it through the system. And then one of the key things that's screening you out is when you don't have the right keywords on your resume. And that's not just keywords, it's phrases as well. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but keyword optimization is super important to making sure that your resume hits that 25% of resumes that a recruiter actually sees. That keyword could be a hard skill that you have. It could be a certification you have. It's going to be something that's going to be relevant to that specific job opportunity. And we'll take you through the process of evaluating keywords and put back into your resume a little bit further in this discussion. And I'll hand it over to you, Dapo.
Great. And so the key thing, the next step in this process, after it goes through an online filter, is getting to a human filter. Now that human filter, otherwise known as the recruiter or the hiring manager, is someone that's kind of screening that out. And as you can see from this cartoon, you want to make sure you hit the point quickly as, only a certain number of characters that you can handle. So the key part, we'll be covering some of the things we mentioned before are important here, such as keywords, applies, and contents, but making sure it's relevant to the role. Because if it's something that talks about what you've done, but it has no impact on what the company's looking for, then you can get a bit, miss out on that. So I want to launch another quick poll just to get a sense of how much time you guys estimate recruiters spend scanning a resume. So just launch the poll here.
All right.
All right. All right, so far we have less than 30 seconds winning. All right. So I'm going to end the poll now and share the results with you. So basically, most of you are spot on. It's less than 30 seconds. There's a very, very short amount of time that recruiters spend scanning through the resume to make sure that it's relevant for their role. And what we'll be going through in the next couple of slides is, optimizing your content. So within that 30 seconds, less than 30 seconds, you can actually portray yourself in a really strong light and get them to really notice and get into the next stage of the hiring process. At this point, I'll transition it to Stephanie to give you some more of the details on how to optimize your resume for the human filters.
Okay, thanks, Dapo. So it's all about first impressions here. And as that poll just showed you, they've done studies on the eye path of recruiters and the time that they spend looking at resumes. And they spend on average 6 seconds scanning your resume. So it's truly important that you get that information in front of them at the top, the prime real estate of your resume, so that they see that you're a fit for their role and they don't keep moving on to the next candidate. Some ways that you can do this vary. Summaries are an excellent way of being able to tell your story specifically to that job at hand. Now, that doesn't apply to every industry. So if you're going into consulting, summaries are not a standard for resumes, and I would recommend keeping that off of your resume. But for those of you that are going after other roles outside of consulting, definitely use the opportunity to quantify your experience and showcase the fit that you have with the role for the recruiters. So the first thing that they see is basically you qualifying yourself and telling them why you're a fit for the job. And times have changed with resumes. I have seen so many resumes that I could confuse with a job description in my day. And that's not the way a strong resume looks in today's market. It's super competitive. And one of the ways that you can really stand out is to start to take your tasks and turn them into achievements. And we'll go through some tricks and strategies on how you can do that shortly. But I can't stress enough how important it is to look back on your experience from a results perspective and a business value perspective and really drive that home on your resume. Not only that, keywords are great for your resume, but data points speak very loudly as well. Data points are going to be able to show a recruiter how you compare against other people that may have a very similar background to you. And again, so many people have resumes that look like job descriptions that just have tasks. When you have data points in your resume and impact, you are going to stand out. It's a really great way of also building interview responses. So I like to look at this process of exploration and figuring out your achievement as not only resume prep, but also interview prep, because these two things are very much tied together. And let's go into impact building. So when it comes to looking at your experience, it can be kind of daunting to think about everything you've done and what were the key highlights. So I recommend breaking this down role by role. And if you can, also do it by skill set to skill set, because those skill sets are going to be different. What's important in one role is going to be different in a different role. So brainstorm, rinse, repeat, and interview yourself as you're going through this. One way that you can do this is using the STAR or PAR approach. And we talked about this in our last presentation. The STAR approach is the situation or task, and the PAR approach is the problem. The main meat of that is, what was that action? What did you do? And the meatier piece is, what was the result of that? You want to capture those things on your resume. What major relationship were you able to turn around? How did you do it? And did that grow your business? Those things are awesome to put on your resume. Now, as you're going through this exploration, you're going to be getting a lot of content. And that's okay. It's a good thing, because you need to tailor that content to different roles. So when you're going through, think about your resume as a master resume that you're putting together with all the key achievements that you've ever created. And then start to weed through, build those achievements into bullet points that aren't long bullet points. If you have a 4-line bullet point, nothing in the middle is going to be read. You want to lead with impact. You want that bullet point to start out with some strong power action verb, boosted user growth by 50%. but keep that bullet point no more than 2 lines so that someone can truly see what was happening there, and you can expand upon that during the interview process. And at the end of the day, this is a hard thing for people to do. The self-reflection is sometimes more challenging than what we'd expect. And it's nice to have a third party to ask us those questions and really pull out some of the things we may not have thought of. So ask the experts. We do this at Career Muse, and I know that MIT and the Career Services Group just launched the alumni platform, Alumni Advisor platform. So utilize your resources and really start to do some of that self-exploration. And I'll show you some questions here now that you can do to get your creative juices flowing. So thinking about what your biggest significant contribution was in that role, if you could pinpoint one thing that you did that's important, write that down. If you're getting stuck, think back on your performance reviews. How was I measured? We're all hired to do something. At the end of the day, it's either making money, saving time, making things better. So really think back on what were the key success metrics in your past roles, and how did you perform against them? Did you exceed them? And those are great things to highlight on your resume. Other things to think about: what were some of the biggest challenges you faced, and how did you overcome those? I alluded to relationships that may be deteriorating before you came into the picture, and you were able to reverse that and really capture a lot more client spend because of your great customer relationship skills. Did you recommend things to senior leadership and pitch them and get approval to launch a new idea? That's an awesome achievement. You should put that on your resume for sure, and make sure you're highlighting that during the interview. What did you create from scratch? Did you build a team? Did you build a process? Or did you improve something? Did you improve that process? Did you find those gaps and efficiencies and drive that home? Did you introduce new tools? So these are all questions that you can ask yourself. And if you're still getting stuck, think about some of the times you might have gotten a pat on the back, or maybe you got an email sent out to the team about a good job that you did. So these are just things to get yourself thinking. Now let's talk about quantification. This is a challenging part of building data points into your resume. But once you do it, these questions are going to help you with that. You're going to be able to get some data points, even if it's not something that you were measuring. There's still data points that can be found. So I put this simply: how many X did you Y? How many people did you manage? How many users did you acquire? How many processes did you implement? How much time did you spend, or how much money did you make? How much money did you save? Time is money. And what time frame did you complete that in? Maybe you don't have anything about the dollars or the time, but you know that you completed it in 2 months, which was 1 month under schedule. That's awesome. Showcase that on your resume. And what was the industry standard? So if you can benchmark yourself against those standards, you can build that into your resume as well to show that you're the best at what you do. And where did you stand? A lot of times we're compared against our peers. We're compared against our competition. Were you first to market? Were you one out of 5 people that were selected for a very special team or initiative at your company? These are great things to try to quantify on your resume. So keep thinking, and how much X did you Y? And without further ado, Dapo, I'll hand it back to you.
We're about to get to the core of our presentation today, and this is where we're going through each aspect of the resume and giving you tips on how to do that. And we want to make sure you don't do like this cartoon says and just buy a resume off eBay. We want to make sure you're able to optimize it for the role you're going after. I've seen so many times in my experience as a hiring manager, so many resumes that I feel could have been better. But unfortunately, I'm just in a position where I just have to make a quick decision. So we don't want you to be in that position. We want to make sure that you put your best foot forward for the jobs that you're applying. So we want to kick this off by launching our third and last poll, so that we can get a sense of the audience's, their goal, the transition with their path. So polls, just kicked off the poll right now. It's trying to find out whether your goal, whether you're transitioning or advancing within your career. Let us know which one so we can spend more time and focus it a bit, or just kind of spread it off evenly. Look at data, it looks spread so much evenly here.
Wow.
Wow, it's pretty even.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll end the poll now and share the results with you. So it looks like it's about even. Most people are transitioning into a new career. And so we'll spend time on each part. We'll focus a little bit more on the transition to a new career and give you some tips and advice and really showing you how to take the job description for a job you're looking to go into, take your resume that you have and the content that we're providing and really hone in on making sure that that resume that you craft from your master resume is tailored and geared to get you success when it gets to the hiring manager by making sure it gets through the online filters and through the hiring filters. So without further ado, I'll transition back to Stephanie to give you more details on how to do that.
Okay. All right. Definitely don't buy it off of eBay. If you're going to do that, spend the money finding someone that can help you really showcase your achievements and figure out what those are, because that's going to have much more bang for your buck. So we're going to talk about a couple of personas. In the interest of time, we're going to target both of these personas to the same role. We've got Camille here, who is a career advancer. And then we've got Cam, who is going to be the transitioner. So Camille here, she is a product manager. She's going into senior product management. She wants to showcase those skills. She's got 7 years of experience, digital advertising and e-commerce. And now let's talk about Cameron. Cam is transitioning into product management from product engineering. He has spent 15 years in device manufacturing and consumer goods, specifically in the mobile space. So let's talk about where they're applying. So they're applying to a senior product manager job. Here's the description. It's a very standard job description for a product management position, talking about owning product strategy, roadmaps, delivering new features, driving user retention and growth, leading cross-functional teams, prioritizing user stories, wireframes, all those things that go into building a great product. And obviously shipping is really important. Let's get this thing to launch. So they're looking for about 5 years and experience in mobile, experience with digital if possible, and someone that's entrepreneurial. This sounds like an Amazon job description. I'm going to pull out a couple of highlights here. So things like ownership, you're going to see that's a key pillar of Amazon's leadership principles. And one thing that I wanted to stress when you are targeting companies is if you can take the keywords and not only drop those keywords, but also start looking at the language and the cultures that those companies embrace. Okay. Customer obsession is one of Amazon's #1 principles, or it is their #1 principle. So you want to reflect that not just in your words, but in the things that you're showcasing on your resume. So let's start to break it down. So now we've done a keyword analysis of this job. So what I've done here is I've pulled out the different keywords that are going to be important to lace through your resume. Now you can do this in 2 different ways. If you have a resume that already exists, you can use this to enhance it. Or if you want to start, hey, I want to start building my resume from scratch. I really want this to be very, very customized to this role and start with a new foundation. This is another way that you can do it. So we're going to carry this through the rest of the presentation, but this is the job description that they're going after. So at the beginning of your resume, you've got a header. And going back to the 6 seconds to impact, that header also is something that you need to pay attention to. From a location perspective, one of the biggest things I see on resumes these days is they always have addresses. Not always, but a lot of times they have addresses. That's taking up space that doesn't need to be taken. You can have your zip code there. Sometimes that's very important to have your city, state, and zip code, because as a recruiter, if I see you having an hour plus long commute, you're not going to be my first pick of a candidate because you might not be happy doing 2 hours of commuting every day. However, if you live in a city or maybe right across the street, that is going to be a closer fit from a geographic perspective, and recruiters like that. Also, if you are looking to make a relocation, having your location on your resume isn't necessary. You don't want to be screened out if you're planning on moving across the country on your own dime because your spouse has taken a new opportunity. You want to give recruiters no reason to not want to pick up the phone and give you a call. So when they call you, we're not saying lie. You tell them, hey, I am looking to relocate. I'm doing this. This is the time frame, and you don't need to pay for it. This is already in the works. So it's important to stress that because recruiters look at you from an A candidate perspective to a B candidate perspective to a C candidate perspective. And if you have little things, even if you're a great fit, if you're not local, that puts you in a B category in most cases. Also, it's important to link it in. And what do I mean? Not just LinkedIn, but hyperlink your email address, hyperlink your LinkedIn profile. So it's really easy for a recruiter to contact you, to check out your LinkedIn profile, and also include other elements that are going to round you out as a candidate. So if you're in a space where a portfolio is important, put your portfolio right up at the top of your resume and make sure that portfolio is just as polished as your resume is, because in some cases, that portfolio is going to get you in the job even more so than your experience and credentials. So it's important to bring that in. If you have a Bitbucket account or some place where you're storing your code, things like that are going to go a long way. Even if you're transitioning from software development into a technical PM type of capacity, they're going to want to see how hands-on you can get. Not only that, when you are putting your links up there, make sure with LinkedIn that you don't have a bunch of the www.linkedin / a bunch of jumbled numbers that they give you when you don't have a customized LinkedIn profile. So it's important that you customize your LinkedIn URL. And if you have any questions about how to do that, feel free to email ben@askcareermuse.com and we'll show you how. Also, it's important to check your email. Because we've got an audience of MIT alum on this call, it's a great thing for me to bring up the fact that you should use that alumni email address right at the top of your resume. So even if your education is on the second page, you're still showing them that you have the MIT brand name right there at the top. Mm-hmm. Another thing to think about is, do I use a title or do I use a tagline? How do I showcase that? If I'm a recruiter and I'm looking at your resume and I have to look further down to see that you were a senior product manager already, I still have to spend time looking below. But if you tell me right at the top of your resume that you're a senior PM, that's great. I'm going to keep reading. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this. So you can put your job title up there, the job alignment with the title that you're going after. If you're not comfortable with that, you can also use taglines. This is great for people that are planning to transition industries or careers, because it can allow you to really benchmark the key skills that you have that are aligning with that role. Although you might not have the same job title because you haven't done product management, you're not comfortable putting that. You have done things that this role is going to require, and you want to show them right at the top that you've done that. Similar to your LinkedIn header.
Yeah. One thing to know is that we may have focused on product management, but these tips apply to other roles that you might be going for, whether they're in tech or outside of tech. The important thing is to remember is that you want to make sure that what the portfolio, the links that you provide are relevant for what you're doing in the industry, so that people can reference your work and see what you're doing. As Stephanie said, these are key tips that can help you stand out. But by all means, look to see if there's any special requirement that the job requires and follow those as well. Those are tips that broad strokes across different industries, but definitely tailored to the role as the requirements on the page suggest as well.
Yes, and that's a great point, Dapo, and I can't stress it enough. Optimization and tailoring of your resume is super important. It's the way that you can show that you are that exact fit that they're looking for, or as close as possible. So here, because Camille's done product management, Camille is going to put product manager right at the top so a recruiter sees that she's done this role before. It's not her first rodeo. Also, she has that digital advertising experience that's a fit with the job. So not only does she have the title fit, she also has the product fit. So right at the top, she's telling the recruiter, I've got the skills to do this job. And going back to what we talked about, just keeping it simple, keeping your emails professional. If you have breezy gal 123, you might want to think about changing that to something that's going to be more professional looking on your resume, because that's one of the first things that somebody sees when looking at this. Also, as you can see, I removed using the display versus link feature that I pulled out the www.linkedin.com to keep that shortened. And I customized the URL. Now, this is also a place where you can optimize with keywords. So digital advertising is a keyword, and the job title product manager is obviously a keyword as well. With Cameron, he's got product development. He's been a product engineer, although it's been in a different space with hardware. He still has product development experience, and we want to showcase that. So he's got that mobile fit. That's an element, a thread of how he fits the role. And also he's worked in the consumer goods space. This is important because he's got his mind in B2C. How does a consumer think? How can we make sure that that experience is delightful, not for a business, but for a person? All right, and as you can see with Cam decided that he wanted to have some consistency between his email address and his LinkedIn URL, so he carried that through on both of his emails and LinkedIn's links. All right, we're going to the summary section. And like I said, it's a great place to capture keywords and tell your story, but it's not always required for the industry you're in. So make sure that you're staying up to speed with what the standards are for the area that you're in. This is the place where you show your match. As a recruiter, I used to have as a recruiting manager, I used to have my recruiters do this for every hiring manager and every candidate we submitted to those hiring managers, basically to show them exactly why this person is someone that needs to be considered for the role. So you have the opportunity to do so here. You can quantify your years of experience. You can build some achievements into your summary statement or underneath your summary statement to really show the key highlights of your career. But this summary is the first thing aside from the header that someone's going to read, and it's a fully optimizable section. So definitely use it to your advantage, and I'll show you some examples of how you can do that. So here I pulled the job description back with us, and here we've got a career advancer summary. So this is Camille. Camille is customer driven. So she's wanting to really focus on what's important to, say, Amazon. So she pulls that into the beginning. Customer driven product manager with 7 years of experience. So she's got the years of experience fit, shipping high quality products from conception through completion. Now that's really important for a lot of roles, but especially product management, is to be able to carry it from ideation to shipping and beyond. So she's capturing that right at the top of her summary statement. First thing that a recruiter will read. Recognized for leading cross-functional teams to transform ideas into mobile advertising solutions, yielding 50% year-over-year growth. So right there, she says that she's done this before. She leads cross-functional teams, and she's got the product fit as well. So we've got some keywords here that I wanted to show you that we've pulled in. And then obviously the quantification and the data points that are so important to being able to make your summary pop. Now Cam is a product engineer. He's done a lot of leading in his engineering role. So entrepreneurial product lead, entrepreneurial spirit is really important to Amazon, and he knows that. So he brings that in. It's also a keyword in that job description. Now he's got 10 plus years. He didn't want to lump himself in 15 plus years to say, maybe I'm overqualified for this role. Maybe my experience is in a different area. So being able to monitor how many years you put on based on the role and not overqualify yourself right at the top of your resume is something to also keep in mind. Recognized for building consumer goods from conception to launch. He's also done this from a different perspective. So he's pulling that in, and that drove 30% year-over-year growth. What a great highlight, great thing to show a recruiter that you can get the job done, hit the ground running, and drive results right away. And again, fully optimized to the role. Next, we're going to talk about skill capture. So this is an important part of being able to showcase the key attributes that you bring to the role, and it's all about keyword optimization. If there's anything that you change on your resume, guys, it is this summary and it's the skill section of your resume, because these are the two pieces that people are looking at, that real estate at the top of your resume. So optimize. Where else can we find these keywords aside from the job description that we just looked at? You can find them on LinkedIn, looking at endorsements, looking at people that have a similar skill set as you, and or the job that you want to be in, and looking at what their key endorsements are. LinkedIn's already curated those. Also looking at other job descriptions. You don't want to just pivot on one role when you're building your resume. You actually want to look at a number of different opportunities and then fine tune based on that opportunity. So what I recommend doing is a little bit of a skills assessment when you're looking at these job descriptions, and keeping a list, keeping track of the different skills that you have, because this is going to vary based on the jobs that you're applying to, what's going to be more important. Your mobile experience is not going to be an important thing to a role that you're not dealing with mobile at all. Priority matters. People read things in a certain way. So being able to showcase the keywords at the top and not in the middle section, put the important words right at the top so somebody reads those first. And then show versus tell. So it's great that you have those keywords, but if you don't have anything to really show how you've driven continuous improvement in your roles within the body of your resume, that's a keyword, but it's not backed by anything. So it's important to also build in the results and things that you've been able to create using that skill. So here's an example of a career advancer. So digital advertising, product ownership, mobile products, those are all the important things, those specific things outside of just a product management skill set that are going to be the attributes that a manager wants this person to have to be able to come in and get the job done fast. So what we've done is created a list of these. A/B testing was actually on here twice. So it's important that someone in this role knows how to do that. So make sure to keep those things in there. And this is a fully optimized, every single keyword here matches up to the job description. And that's a good place to be in. All right. So the transitioner, same thing. Not every skill is going to be the same, but we've pulled different elements. So look at your experience, figure out what those threads are, and build them in. So maybe you don't have agile, but you know how to do lean methodology and work with iterative processes to drive efficiency. Grab that. Stakeholder engagement, always important in a product management role. So do some reflection too, and you're finding these, like I said, not only on this job description, but on other places like LinkedIn or other job descriptions. Experience redefined, lead with impact. Do you put the company or the title first? The one that's gonna be more important. So Amazon is a great thing to showcase first on your resume. A lot of top companies you wanna lead with. But if it's a smaller company and product management's the thing that you're pivoting on, go with that. Make sure to define your dates, keep those consistent. Recruiters prefer months and years over just years. However, if you've got some gaps and things like that and you want to choose years over months, that's okay too. If you have tenure at a company, make sure that you're grabbing that full tenure and not breaking it apart. I mean, you want to break it apart underneath the role, but you also want to do an umbrella employment date that covers the tenure, and then break down the roles that you had been progressively moving into within it and the dates that correspond to that. We talked about tasks versus achievements. I'll show you how to separate that in the next slide. and giving more context. That's all about the data points. Industry jargon, if you're transitioning industries, pull that out. You have the skill set, but that industry jargon might bucket you from a recruiter's perspective into the industry that you've been in for 10 years and not the fact that you're trying to transition. So here's some examples here where we have separated the tasks. It's 2 to 4 lines of high-level duties, and then the bullet points that you have corresponding with that. So those are all the impact statements that you've done a lot of brainstorming to get to. I don't recommend having too many bullet points, so stay with 3 to 6, maybe 7, but less is more, guys. Again, this is also optimized, so you can see that we've pulled in a lot of the key results, a lot of the key things that they're going to be working with, and translated that into their experience as well, so it's fully optimized. We did that also with CAM. So CAM was at ABC Corp. No one knows ABC Corp. So we actually led with product engineer or product lead, might be even better than that. And that, again, is fully optimized. Education, because you guys all went to MIT, MIT is a great brand to lead with, but if there's other attributes that might be more important about your degree, you can also flip that. Make sure it's well positioned. So if you don't have any experience and you're graduating, you want to put that right at the top of your resume because that's going to be the strongest thing that you're hinging upon. But work experience takes priority over education as well. Make sure that you're also thinking about this from your industry perspective because this can vary based on industry, but know that these sections can be prioritized. When do years matter? They matter. You can put them on for 5 years. I typically don't even recommend, you don't have to have your years of graduation on your resume, especially if they're going back 15, 20 years. You want to remove those altogether. And what's your Greek? Some schools don't use this like MIT, but if you're cum laude or magna cum laude, you want to be able to showcase that. It looks a little strange if you have your GPA on your resume, if you're not in the consulting world after a few years, but you can still put on your Greek and showcase that you were a top performer from an educational perspective. And lastly, round it out. So exude thought leadership, showcase your projects, showcase your involvement, build the details, and get personal if you can. You might have some things that match up, interests that match up with somebody that you're sending your resume to. So check out their LinkedIn profile, see if there's anything that you know about them that you can start to build a commonality with. And so here's some examples of those. And other things that you can build in: awards, projects, interests, publications, patents, you name it. These are all going to round you out as a candidate. Other attributes that not every job seeker is putting on their resume. So do some brainstorming here and make sure that you're really highlighting those key achievements. And then go beyond the job application. It's not just about sending your resume over through the systems. Follow up with the recruiter. Use LinkedIn to find out who might be in that group. Get your resume in their inbox. Set up informational interviews. Go get your face seen. Meet people. Make connections. And referencing back our last presentation, when you think about your resume, you want to cry. Be concise, be relevant, and be impactful. And with that, and Dapo, I'll let you take this slide because I've talked enough. Oh, and it looks like he may have fallen off. Nigeria doesn't always have the best bandwidth in certain locations. So a little bit about us, and then we're going to go into the QA, is Career Muse. We are launching the first AI-driven resume optimization app. So everything we just shared with you is something that we are building and have built into this tool. So get past the filters, save hours of time doing this on a job-by-job basis. In the tool, you can tailor your resume within minutes. You can figure out where that skill matches, like we just discussed. You can track and store your resume on the cloud, and you can customize and share those links anytime, anywhere. So So if you're interested, sign up for our beta access. We've got a link there, launch.askcareermuse.com. And thanks for joining the presentation. Let's go into the QA.
Okay, thank you so much, Stephanie. As Stephanie mentioned, we lost Dapo, but we will continue with the Q&A. We're getting lots of good questions. Stephanie, so a question from a young alum who says, I just graduated and don't have a lot of work experience. How do you create big impact if you haven't made many achievements yet in your career?
Dapo, you're back.
Hello.
Hi, Dapo.
That's a great question. And so one of the things that you're going to want to look back on, and I recommend all students do this, is what type of projects were you working on while you were in school? And were you a part of a team? Were you leading that team? What were you creating in those projects? And turn those projects actually into mini experiences. So you can treat it like an experience section. You want to talk about your specific contributions. What was that going towards? And what was the purpose of that project? So if there's some alignment with what you're going after, great. And maybe you don't have the experience and you don't have the alignment, you still want to leverage project work that you've done to show that you've done some things within your educational experience. And then think back on other skills that you may have developed in your work opportunities that aren't your career opportunities. So you might have learned time management, you might have learned customer service when you were in your retail job. So those are skills that you can build into your resume to plug in for the gap that you have, or not the gap that you have, just the lack of experience because you're new to the workforce.
Yeah. Just to add on there, I think as a hiring manager, I've sometimes seen people that didn't have all the skills for the role, but had some interesting, tangential skills that I wouldn't have thought of, or something that was interesting to me that could be very useful for where I'm trying to drive the project, the product, or the business. So it's important that if you're not qualified, you make sure you at least strike most of the boxes, at least you have most of the skills, but there's something else. There could be something else on you that you have that might be interesting to hiring managers. So don't forget to be very clear, as Stephanie mentioned, about those details and put those in your resume as well.
Another thing to think about too is you can also go back to your honors and your GPA, and the coursework that you've done is a great place to capture keywords too. So maybe you don't have the experience specifically working with that, but you learned about it recently. So grab that coursework, and if you have an impressive GPA, make sure that that's on your resume if you're a recent graduate.
Great. So shifting gears a little bit, if you have many years of work experience, how many years should be reflected on your resume? And a continuation of that is, should you use headers and sections to pull out relevant experience?
Dapo, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so I'm guessing the question means if you just organize each of the, maybe it's project management, you list all the roles under that, and then if it's product manager, you list all the roles under that, or what have you. So, and then the other question is about whether or not what to do with all the years of experience you have. So starting with the number of years of experience, I think it's important to take the most recent ones. You don't want to dig into things you've done maybe as an intern or just after graduating college, but you want to pick the more recent things that you've done. To me, once it's past 10 years, I'm a bit cautious that, maybe this person's really out of touch with the industry or doesn't have enough experience with it. So keep it to the more recent roles. Take a look at what the role is asking for. If something you've done in your past, is relevant, then bring that in from some and keep it up until that history point. But if it's not, something that's, in your past, then keep it to the more recent role. Again, as Stephanie mentioned, it's all about tailoring a resume. So while you have all this experience from your years, keep it focused on the most recent ones, and the recent ones tailored to what it has, what you've done that's applicable to the role. Now, using the headers, it's a bit tricky because, it may be a bit confusing, but it's an opportunity. I've tried that before where, I've seen it before. People have had product management, list all the skills under that. It's, again, it's almost like you're having all these skills and putting the role around it. So it's almost like you're having multiple tailored resumes in one resume. So I'd say you want to keep it to one skill that's relevant for the role, and then have your resume all tailored for that job that you're going after. Stephanie, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I'd say that in the resume world, the standard is about 10 to 15 years. I encourage people to keep it as current as possible, but sometimes you've got some experiences from, a very well-known company that you worked at in the 90s that you want to capture. I recommend not putting anything that's going to date you on your resume. So things that have 1995, anything with the 90s, 80s back, try to keep that off your resume. And things that you can do to still showcase that experience is you could create a prior experience section where you capture the companies and the key achievements. Don't have that be the bulk of the experience on your resume, but bring in those achievements, bring in the name, and you can keep the dates off of that if you feel more comfortable having it on your resume, but not wanting to date yourself. Unfortunately, age bias does happen, and I wish it didn't, but we recommend trying to give recruiters no reason to not want to pick up the phone and call you.
Great. And building on that, what is your best advice around gaps in your resume if you had to leave the workforce for a while and are looking to start applying to new jobs? What's your advice there?
Okay, so this is a good one. I was just talking to a group of women transitioning back into the workforce yesterday about this. So when you have a gap in your resume, there's different ways that you can conceal it. Not so much conceal it, but get creative. So I recommend being current, figuring out things that you can do to make yourself current. So if you've done volunteer work, if you've done pro bono consulting, if you've done things recently, you want to capture that and maybe put an umbrella over it, right? You've done some consulting gigs, so treat it like a gig economy role where you've done some consulting from 2015 to now, but underneath that, there's separate experiences within it. Another thing that you can do if you have a little bit of a gap is go from months and years to just years on your resume. There are functional resumes that exist. I don't recommend them as a recruiter or hiring manager. They know that you have a gap, so there's no reason to pull off all the dates. And people like to see where you got your experience, and functional resumes don't allow you to do that. So take the chrono-functional approach, also known as a combination resume, where you're really selling your achievements. Bring in those meaty achievements to the top of your resume, right underneath your summary. The summary is a great place to still show, hey, I might not have done this since 2010, but I still have 10 or 15 years in this space. So you can still say and quantify your experience and cover up that. But bring the key achievements in underneath the skills, underneath the summary, so people are looking at that before they dive deep into your experience. So different ways to mask it, and obviously ask an expert too if you're struggling or you're not getting calls back because of the gap.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Anything to add there, Dapo, before we move on?
I think Stephanie covered most of it. I think the only thing I'd add in there is just things like projects you've worked on. So Stephanie touched on volunteer work. So if there are any projects that you may have done for companies that you worked, you can also bring that up as a section and make that, the priority that you put in there. So that's another thing to add in there. If you've gone out and started a couple of companies and things like that, or, side businesses that you've done, those are good fodder to put in there as things that you've done in those gaps.
And also, as you're going through and you have some gaps, there might be skill gaps. And this doesn't just apply to people with gaps in their resume. If you're looking at a job description and there's a gap in your skill set, you want to be able to look at ways of filling in that gap. So there's different certification programs. Say Google Analytics is really important for that role. You can get that certification in 2 days. So go do that, sign up on Udacity, pay $10, get the certification, put it on your resume. You're hitting the keywords. You might have not used it professionally, but you still have that certification. So you've got more of a job match than some people applying that don't have that. So other things to fill in gaps on the technology and tool side.
Okay, moving on. You guys have talked a lot about keywords. So we have a question. When you're applying to a position that asks for both a resume and a cover letter, is it important to use keywords in both documents?
Yes. Yes. So you want to be able to bring in those keywords to that cover letter. That cover letter, if you're going to write a cover letter, should be very focused on that individual that you're sending it to, or the company or specific initiative. So make sure that you're customizing that cover letter to the opportunity, which includes the keywords as well as the achievements that are going to showcase the fact that you can get this job done. Keep it short and sweet, bullet point those achievements. So if they're scanning your cover letter, I mean, recruiters don't have time to read a whole page of text. So you really want to make it easy for them to digest the skill fit very quickly. So optimize it and also bring in those achievements.
Yeah. One of the good things that cover letters let you do is that you can actually take a snapshot story. So think of one instance in your job where you've actually had, as Stephanie pointed out, the STAR approach, and you can take that and talk about that in your cover letter and use that as an example. So you're almost like your resume has those still snapshots, and you're just taking one of those snapshots and expanding on that and using that as a way of really people seeing the like proof of what you've done with some keywords that are tied to the role. So you're like, okay, I see all those things he's done, and in his cover letter, he now points to me an exact sample of what he's done that includes my keywords, that includes the context. I can now say, okay, this person is someone I would like to speak to and learn more about them as a fit for the role I have.
Mm-hmm. I did think of another thing for people with gaps. So if you do not feel comfortable, if you have a 5-year gap in your experience, you can also, was it a family sabbatical? Was it a travel sabbatical? So if you can't fill it in, you can also make sure that they know what was happening during that time frame, either within the experience or actually in the personal section, the additional details section, showing average traveler traveled to 11 countries during recent sabbatical. So if someone sees, oh, okay, there's a reason why there's a 2-year gap there.
Thank you. So we've had about 80 questions come in. So we're trying to get to as many as we can before we hit the hour mark. Can you guys give a couple examples of taglines? We've had several questions come in around that.
Yeah, let's see. So I would so the tagline, you can take 2 approaches. So you could do something that's going to describe yourself or bring in your certification. So certified fraud specialist or certified agile scrum master, creative services. So it's actually, you can pull the keywords in, or you can use something that is more achievement based. So let's see. Customer. So we're going with, you're putting me on the spot here. Customer obsessed product manager with experience transforming user experiences, driving 50% retention, something like that. That's gonna right at the top show one of the achievements. You can use that as an approach too. So there's different ways that you can bring in the tagline. One would be to take the keyword approach and really showing that at the top. The other one would be building in an achievement or just going with the job title match.
And remind us, where does the tagline fall on the resume, Stephanie?
The tagline can fall right at the top of your resume. So right where it could be right at the top underneath your name. It could be right above the summary that you're putting in. Those are the 2 spots that I'd put it. So right at the top of your resume. If you're gonna go the achievement way, don't build the achievement into your summary. So just be mindful of how you're using that space and you're not repeating the same things. But yeah, if you have it right at the top of your resume, that's great, underneath your name or the section or the summary section.
Okay. So I think we have time just for one more question here. It does look as though we have several consultants that are listening today who have asked about the resume summary.
Yeah.
Why is it different for those working in the consulting field? And I guess what advice do you have for them?
I'll let you take this one.
So the thing about it in the consultancy field is that your role is going to vary quite a bit into different parts and different things that you're going to be doing. And so having a summary kind of doesn't really add unless you're going to be a specialist within a consulting firm. So the companies are really looking for your pedigree, school, experience, and things like that. And so their focus is what have you done and how they show that to the customer. Because the consultants sell your resume to different consulting companies. So it doesn't need to be tailored in that sense, because who you are is just the snapshot of all the things you've done. And it doesn't need to tailor because it could be anything. You could be going to work, helping a consumer brand. You can go into a finance industry. So we want to make sure that it's something versatile across different industries. So that's why the summary, although like specificity doesn't really apply as much there. So this is feedback we've had from the consulting firms, whether it's McKinsey and the rest of them. They prefer to just focus on what you've done, the key accomplishments you had, how you've stood out among peers, your intelligence through GMAT scores, GPAs, all of those that can show them and their clients that you're a really smart person with the right experience to tackle the consulting project.
Great.
Thank you. So it looks like we are out of time for today. Dapo, Stephanie, we can't thank you guys enough for coming back and doing a part 2 session today. As a reminder, this webcast will be available on our YouTube page, as is the part 1 of the session, so you can check that out. We will provide all of your great questions to Dapo and Stephanie. Any last thoughts or information you want to share, guys, before we sign off?
I think if you guys have any questions that you want to address, we've got some resources to Power Verb documents. Send us an email, ben@askcareermuse.com. And if optimizing your resume is something that you just cringe at the thought of, come check us out, launch.askcareermuse.com, and we'll keep you posted about our launch date for the first resume optimization app that can take all that pain away.
And to add on, even if you don't cringe at it, do check it out. I think you'd enjoy it. It's one of those things where coming from MIT, I had to take technology approach to kind of refine the process. So I do hope you sign up at launch@askcareermuse.com. And again, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you for all the comments last year and the comments right before. And we look forward to speaking with you online. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, guys.
Take care, everyone, and good luck.
Bye.
Bye.